Hello everybody. So today we're going to talk about translating written language to algebraic language. This is a very important skill in algebra because, especially for solving word problems. So you'll have word problems in mathematics throughout all the different sections, as well as the Keystone exam. So it's really important that you're able to use math language and then translate it to the proper algebra. So before we start that, here are 2 definitions. So please make sure you copy these definitions down to help with your retention. So first is a variable. A variable is a letter representing a value in a quantity. The most common variable in algebra is x. But y is the second most common, but really you could use any variable you want to represent an unknown. Typically you want to try to use variables that don't look like numbers. And then a numerical expression is a mathematical expression consisting of numbers and operations. So there's no variables in a numerical expression. And then a variable expression is a mathematical expression consisting of numbers, one or more variables, and operations. So pretty much a numerical expression and a variable expression are the same, except a variable expression has variables in it, where a numerical expression does not. But both numerical expressions and variable expressions have numbers and operations in them. Okay? So again, we're going to primarily write variable expressions today from a written or verbal expression. Okay. Now this chart is an extremely important chart. So I'm going to leave this up here for a minute after I'm done talking. But it's very, very important you copy this chart down in your notes. Okay? So these are all words or phrases that mean key operations. So we have our 4 major operations, or 4 basic operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And then we also have phrases that mean a quantity. A quantity in math is something that's in parentheses. So for today, I just want you guys to focus on the 4 basic ones, okay? I'm just circling some important things here. Focus on addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. All right. So for addition, we have sum, more than, plus, increased, added to, or together. For subtraction, we have difference, between, minus, decreased by, less than, subtracted from, and fewer than. Now you may have noticed that there's asterisks next to less than, subtracted from, and fewer than. And there's an important reason why. The reason why is because when you see one of those 3 phrases, less than, subtracted from, or fewer than, you have to switch the order of the things you're subtracting. So for example, 3 less than x, if I were to write that down in algebra, that actually is x minus 3. Because 3 is being taken away from x. Okay? So it's 3 less than x. So it's actually x minus 3. So when you have less than, subtracted from, or fewer than, you have to switch the order of the things you're subtracting because that first thing is being taken away from the second one. So for multiplication, we have the product of, times, multiplied by, or increased by a factor of. And for division, we have divided by, quotient, per, out of, ratio of, or anything that implies a percent. All right, those are all phrases that mean division. Now, with subtraction and division, the order is critical. Okay, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But addition and multiplication are what's called commutative operations. All right, so that means the order does not matter when you're adding or multiplying 2 things. You would still get the same answer. But for subtraction and division, the order is very important. Okay, and now for these phrases of division, whatever comes before the phrase will typically go in your numerator, and whatever comes after the phrase will go in your denominator. Okay? And the last thing I want to talk about, and this is a lot of information, I realize that, is that the words sum, difference, product, and quotient. Okay, the 4 phrases I just circled. When you have one of those 4 phrases, the 2 things you're working with actually come after the phrase. So for example, the sum of x and the number 5. That actually means x plus 5. So those four phrases, sum, difference, product, and quotient, the two things you're working with actually come after the phrase. Okay? So again, make sure you copy these down in your notes. Okay, so let's go over some examples of translating into algebra. Okay, so number one, we have a number minus 10. Well, anytime you're doing these problems and you see the phrase a number, and I'm highlighting it every single problem we have here, use a variable to represent the number because we don't know the number. So for all these problems, I'm going to use x. Now, if it doesn't specify, you can use x or pretty much any variable you want. Sometimes you'll see for these problems, it'll say a number p, and then you would use p. But for number one, it says a number minus 10. Minus means subtraction, and then obviously the number 10 is 10, so your final answer is x minus 10. So here's what we're talking about, that phrase, the sum. The sum of 3 and a number. Well, the phrase sum means addition, but if you remember from the beginning chart, when you have the phrase the sum, the two things you're adding actually come after the phrase. So what are they? Well, one is 3, and the second one's a number. The word and is not an operational word. The word and joins the two things you're taking the sum, difference, product of, or quotient of in one of those problems. Okay? So this could be x plus 3, or it could be 3 plus x. Remember, when you're adding two things, the order does not matter. And number 3, 4 minus a number. Again, minus means subtraction, so it's 4 minus x. These are your more basic examples. Now I'm actually going to jump to the steps. So here's the steps that I want you to follow when you're solving any of these problems. This is especially true for the advanced problems. The first problems we just went over were more your basic problems. So the first thing we'd like you to do is replace the words that mean numbers with the numbers themselves. So for example, if you see the word 10 in a problem, cross it off and write the number 10. The second step we recommend you do is replace the phrase a number with a variable. Typically we put x by it. Okay? And then step 3 is identify keywords and replace them with the respective operations. So if you see the phrase product, that means multiplication. You would put a times symbol. And then finally, you want to tie everything together. Now, for today, we're just writing algebraic expressions. But it'll be write the algebraic expression, equation, and equality. But make sure you're careful of your order for subtraction and division. So now let's go back. So a number less than 6, we'll follow our steps. We have 6, and then x. Now, less than means subtraction. But if you remember, if you have, this is one of those ones that had asterisks after it. If you have the phrases less than, subtracted from, or fewer than, those phrases, that first thing is being taken away from the second thing. So the final answer is actually 6 minus x. So it's so important that when you have less than, subtracted from, or fewer than, you switch the order of the two things you're subtracting. Number 5, the product of 7 and a number. So let's follow our steps. Cross off 7 and write the word 7. Cross off a number and write x. So we did the first two steps already. Product. Look back in your chart. Product actually means multiplication. Remember, this word and is not an operational word. It just means we're doing an operation of these two things because it joins them. But product does mean multiplying. So the final answer is 7x. Now, this is the algebraic way of writing multiplication. In algebra, when you're showing multiplication, you smudge the two things together. Okay? You could also put a dot, but it's more common in algebra to smudge them together. Okay? This is the notation you'll see most often. And then finally, number 6, the quotient of a number and 11. Well, quotient means divide. Okay? And actually, I kind of did the steps in order there. A number is x and 11. So the quotient is one of those phrases where the two things you're dividing actually come after the phrase. Remember, the word and is not an operational word, but it means we're doing an operation of these two. So we're dividing. So when you have the phrase the quotient, what comes first has to go in your numerator. What comes second has to go in your denominator. You can't switch that, otherwise it'd be incorrect. So your final answer is x divided by 11. And you can write it like this if you want to. But in algebra, we typically prefer the fraction notation of writing that. Okay? All right, so let's do 2 harder examples. All right? So, and again, we're going to stop right here, and we'll do some more complex examples tomorrow. So, it's so important to do harder examples to follow your steps. So, we have the sum of a number and 4 minus 3. So let's do our basic steps. We have 4. We have 3. A number is x. Sum means adding, but the 2 things we're adding actually come after this phrase. So and is joining these 2 things. So it's x plus 4. And then it just says minus 3, so the minus 3 comes after it. So you're done. And then finally, this last example, we're actually going to skip that because tomorrow's lesson we'll talk more about things that imply parentheses. All right? So this actually problem does involve parentheses, so if you want, you can try it on your own. But we'll discuss this problem in more detail tomorrow. So thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, please let us know. I think one of the biggest keys for this lesson is to study the keywords. Okay? So if you go back here and study these keywords, you're going to be in really good shape. Have to make sure you switch the order for these 3 phrases. Okay? And remember, if you have sum, difference, product, or quotient, the 2 things you're working with come after those phrases. The word and simply joins them. And also for division, be careful of your order, because the first thing goes in the numerator and the second thing goes in your denominator. So thank you very much. Again, have a fantastic day.